You can find out more at the website arneighbors.org. Mark, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's good of you to have me on again. I'm on pins and needles, waiting for the Judge Moody, federal judge in Little Rock there, to issue his formal ruling on our case. And I don't know, Paul, do you want to give a rundown of the case to bring the readers up, listeners where we are?
The last time I talked to you was before Christmas, and we were pretty confident that the judge was going to rule in your favor, and that hasn't happened yet. But tell us, you brought a lawsuit because of why?
Well, in 2012, I have found that the Republicans and the Democrats can be bipartisan, okay? And, of course, that's not the same thing as nonpartisan. Being bipartisan is not the same thing as nonpartisan. George Carlin, the late, great George Carlin, had it right. Sometimes bipartisan means a larger than usual deception is being planned.
Wow.
And what they decided was, like you said in your intro, you're not very popular about the Marble Palace. I'm not very popular either, because I think independents should have equal access to the ballot with Republicans and Democrats. And that's a very unpopular idea. And in 2012, I ran for the state legislature. We decided at the last minute to go down and file and do it. And then I left the state. So I really only campaigned for a couple of months, still got 39% of the vote. If I had campaigned all summer, I might have messed up and won, Paul. So it cost my family some money. But at any rate, I thought, well, maybe I want to do it again. And lo and behold, they changed the law. They changed the law that if you want to run as a Republican or a Democrat, you can wait till the last minute and file. If you want to run as an independent, though, you can no longer do it, because they changed the law to where you have to collect a bunch of signatures and bring those signatures with you. So you have to collect. Really, if you decide right now that you want to run as an independent, it's probably too late.
And so,
unless you want to run.
You think that's a direct result because you ran as an independent and you were competitive?
Well, not just me. I mean, there were a bunch of people running every time. It was, the numbers were like 20 people would file as an independent, 11 people would file as an independent, and then they made these laws, and it's gone down to 1 or 2 every year would run for the legislature as an independent. So if they wanted to have a chilling effect to prevent people from running as independents, they appear to have accomplished their goal with that law. Only one small problem. The legislature had tried moving the date up before, and it had been ruled unconstitutional before several times.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that did not stop them, because they're playing this game where, as soon as the federal judges, they throw out the unconstitutional early date, restore equality to the ballot, and then as soon as the judges are not looking, they just move the date up again. So, and that's the one thing, Paul, I've learned a lot in this process. It is not a small thing for a man of, a regular person like me. You want to take on the state, and you want to take on the Republicans and the Democrats, and they're very determined to fight and defend this law. And so it has been a real learning experience with me, how hard and how long, and this has been going on 4 years, and the judge, he has given us a heads up. He will find the law unconstitutional. And basically the first time, there were 3 parts to the case. Did I have standing? And of course, they attacked my standing all the way to the Supreme Court and back. And the other part was I actually harmed? Because I filed for lieutenant governor, and I want to keep my options open to file again for lieutenant governor or some statewide office. And the judge ruled, okay, that's real harm because they've changed this law. Because, all I wanted to do was the right to do the same thing I had done the previous election cycle.
Yeah.
Decide the last minute whether I want to run, just like people in the clubs can do. So, and then, of course, the Secretary of State's office, one of the painful things about this for me is that the Secretary of State and this has been awkward for us. He's been put in a very difficult position of defending ballot access laws that are difficult to defend. Mm-hmm. They didn't make the laws, but they were following the laws. And Paul, they defended them in court. I recognize the honor.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Yeah, pretty anxious to get that intro over with. I've been waiting, I guess, on pins and needles since Saturday afternoon to come back on the air and talk to you about what is going on in Arkansas politics. Good morning to you. Thanks for starting the beginning of your week. I hope it's a prosperous one. With us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. That liberty machine stands in contrast to everything that the Republican Party establishment stands for. They don't like the truth getting to the voters. They don't like a vital component of that liberty machine, which is a mirror that actually will show the politicians who they really are, not who they like to believe themselves to be. Like, I'm a great conservative, and then we show them, no, this is what you said on the campaign trail. This is what you're actually doing. You're not the same person, and they hate that. They hate the mirror. They can't stand it. Right now, we're the liberty machine, it just is what it is. I mean, a mirror, what are you going to argue with a mirror? See, they don't like that. Right now, Asa Hutchinson, he can't stand the fact that the liberty machine is getting the truth to the voters, and we're also showing him, and we're showing his supporters, and we're showing anybody who supports him and has gone along with this joke of leadership in this state under the guise of republicanism, violating the platform time and time again. We're showing them who they really are. And they're not conservatives. Now, why am I so fired up this morning on this Monday? Well, I don't know how long it's going to take to get through all of this, but our whiteboard for this week says tangled web. Tangled web, but web is spelled with two B's at the end because, of course, we're referring to the Republican Party of Arkansas State Chairman Doyle Webb. Now, before we get to what happened this weekend, and I just want you to know you need to stick with us because you're going to hear what you will not hear anywhere else. Okay, we have the minutia of this story. I can tell you what is being reported is not accurate, but there's a reason. Why it's not accurate, because Doyle Webb has not asked for a retraction on something that he did not say. But I'm going to get to that in a minute. First, let's talk about Doyle Webb for a second. Let's talk about the Republican Party of Arkansas chairman, shall we? Okay. He is no fan of Jan Morgan. He is no fan of Jan Morgan. I'm going to go over this with you right now, okay? Back in September, when Jan Morgan was deciding whether or not she was going to run for governor and challenge Asa Hutchinson, she was deciding whether or not she was going to form an exploratory committee to see if she could even run for governor. All of this happened. And of course, Jan Morgan has a huge social media presence. She is, by the way, a genuine social media presence, not the kind that you buy like Twitter bots, which we're probably going to have to talk about that tomorrow. But Ace is at it again, buying votes and using Twitter bots. The last time they had that bogus national poll that said that Asa was the third most popular governor. By the way, there are no conservative governors on that list. Like Scott Walker, he's not on that list, but Ace is the third most popular governor in the nation. Then that was retweeted like 90-something times, and the majority of the retweets were at Saudi Arabia Uber 1, at Saudi Arabia Uber 34, at Saudi Arabia Uber. Those were the retweets that Asa got. So, I mean, he's been exposed as using this before. He's desperate to try to compete with Jan Morgan's genuine grassroots, realistic social media outreach. But so back when all this was going on, when this first started, you need to know one thing. Doyle Webb blocked and unfriended Jan Morgan on social media. Now, that right there is essentially saying you're not going to have my support. Now, I don't know why he would do that. I don't know why Doyle Webb would block Jan Morgan on social media, but that happened from the outset of this entire dispute between the Republican Party establishment, which is Asa Hutchinson, and now apparently Doyle Webb. But see, then it went even further. So you have Jan Morgan, and she starts getting these invites to Republican county committees all across the state, and then she gets uninvited from the Craighead County. She almost got uninvited from Mississippi County, but they stood up, and they said no to the governor's spokesperson. The pressure, not spokesperson, but the governor's employee, Doug Smith, not only sent a phone call to now we know Dorothy Crockett because she's on social media saying so, and we have the emails from the governor's employee trying to put pressure on the county committee of Mississippi County and say we don't want Jan Morgan here, and it went on in other committees as well, like Baxter County as well. So all of this pressure was coming down the pike. And eventually it gets to Washington County, and Jan Morgan goes and speaks at Washington County. And Washington County, like they do with every single guest on their Facebook post, on their Facebook page, they just say, hey, this was our speaker this week. We wish her the best of luck in her future endeavors. Doyle Webb called the chairman of the Washington County Republican Committee and demanded that they take the Facebook post down, saying, best of luck in your future endeavors, which is actually a very general statement, very broad. It could mean a lot of things. Doyle Webb was so sensitive that he had them take the post down, and later they changed it and they edited it to something actually that seemed worse than the first. But anyway, we interviewed the Washington County Republican chairman. We talked about all this. This has all been exposed before Christmas, that Doyle Webb, the RPA, when I say the RPA, I don't mean the entire RPA. Let me just be clear. When I say the RPA, I'm talking about the ones at the office down in Little Rock that'll have their little meetings with Asa and decide which true conservative they need to primary to get to replace, so they'll have somebody who's loyal to Asa. That's the RPA that I'm talking about here. Because honestly, the RPA, the base, is conservative, and there is a soft tyranny at play here. So you have Washington County's Facebook post being policed by the Central Committee. Okay? Now, look, here's the thing. And you can go back and you can look at my interview with a Washington County chairman, right? Okay? The fact is, you go back and look at it, it's very clear. All right. The chairman of the Washington County would probably disagree with my characterization, but in the interview, I mean, I straight up asked him, I said, if Doyle Webb hadn't called, would you have changed the Facebook post? If Doyle Webb hadn't called, would you have changed the Facebook post? And the answer is no, you wouldn't have. Okay? So, period. We know how sensitive Doyle Webb is on this, right? All right, so then, moving on, you have this that came out in December. Okay? The county chairman's resolution basically trying to stand up for freedom of thought in an open debate, in an open, supposedly free party where we're going to debate ideas. Asa and the Republican Party establishment, Joe, put up this. We want to put up not the rules, but we want to put up the resolution. Okay. Here is this resolution that back on December the 2nd of 2015. Okay, be it resolved by the Arkansas Republican Party County Chairmen's Association, all Republican county committees are independent organizations operating under the rules of the Republican Party of Arkansas and are governed by the rules of the state party and rules of each local county committee. All Republicans and Republican organizations are hereby reminded that each county committee has both the right and obligation to encourage a healthy debate and deliberation within their county and are free to invite any speaker or presenter that, in the view of their chairman or other designated member of that committee or the county committee as a whole, would contribute to educate and inform Republicans in that county on issues of concern. Therefore, as representatives of the 75 county committees, we remind our fellow Republicans of that any efforts to restrict county committees from inviting guest speakers or any other presenter that they see fit violates the delegated and implied powers and responsibilities of each county committee and county chairman. Counties are reminded that speakers and programs should promote the principles outlined in the Arkansas Republican Party platform and principles. This adopted this date, Saturday, December 2nd of 2017. Now, why in the world would the County Chairman's Association, which to me is the real RPA, feel the need to clarify? Because they were being bullied? That's why. They're being bullied by people who think they owned the party. And that person right now, the head of that is Governor Asa Hutchinson. All right? And I'm going to say now, in my opinion, it's Doyle Webb. So before we get to the news of the weekend, and what all happened at the Political Animals Club, the Northeast Arkansas Political Animals Club on Friday, you need to know that Doyle Webb has blocked Jan Morgan on social media. You need to know about the Washington County incident. You need to know about the pressure that's been applied from the governor's office, Mississippi County, Craighead County, Baxter County, Washington County, and you need to know about this resolution where the county committees say, hey, we're autonomous, and if we want to have Jan Morgan to speak, we'd like to have Jan Morgan to speak. If we want to have Asa Hutchinson to speak, we're going to have Asa Hutchinson to speak, although we all know that it wouldn't have been a problem if we're just talking about having Asa to speak. Okay, we all know that, right? So here we go. Talk business and politics, Joe. No, actually, stop. Let's go to the rules. Go to the rules. So, what are the rules concerning primaries in Republican committees? What are those rules? Well, they're very specific, and they essentially say this: the Republican Party in each county shall hold a primary election in every even-numbered year. Number one, except for support of candidates in a presidential preferential primary, the state chairman, the national committee man, the national committee woman, the district chairman, county election commissioners, that goes and lists all these things, shall not endorse or otherwise publicly show favoritism to one Republican candidate over another prior to the Republican nominee being elected. Jan Morgan's been blocked on social media. You think that qualifies? The chairman of the RPA's blocked Jan Morgan on social media. You think that qualifies? Do you? I mean, is that favoritism? I mean, I would say so. Okay. The state executive committee and or the respective county committees. All right. So you can't show any favoritism over other candidates. That's what it's saying. And here we have the chairman, Doyle Webb, on Friday, speaking to the Northeast Arkansas Political Animals Club. Let's start with the audio, Joe. Here's what he said in his speech. This is Doyle Webb. Listen to this.
I pick up a red seat or two, but we know that the Republicans that are in office represent the views of their constituency, and we see our constituency coming out to vote in large numbers this time.
Stop. So let me paint the picture for you. So you have Sarah Jo, who works for the RPA. She's holding up a map of the blue and the red of Arkansas and how much red is covering the state of Arkansas. That's what she's doing right there, okay? And why are people, listen to what Doyle Webb says, why are people going to come out and vote? Well, because Republicans are representing the views of their constituents, which a lot of them are not. But so he says, thank you, Sarah Jo, and he takes down the map, back it up a little bit. Actually, start from the beginning and listen.
Pick up a red seat or two, but we know that the Republicans that are in office represent the views of their constituency, and we see our constituency coming out to vote in large numbers this time. Thank you, Sarah Jo. Why do we see that happening? We have a governor that is the third most popular in the nation, the most popular governor in the South, who has lived up to his promises. Computer coding, Arkansas is now recognized by the computer coding and our strides in computer education in all of our schools. Under Republican leadership, we have had the lowest unemployment in the state's history. Lowest unemployment. He has brought 60,000 jobs into the state. If we've had the lowest unemployment, we've also had the highest reduction in income taxes, which is a great Republican position. Low unemployment, high tax reduction, and job creation and focus on education. That's what a Republican legislature, a Republican governor, a Republican leadership will do, and that's what we anticipate occurring over the next 2 years.
So he says everything but re-elect Governor Asa Hutchinson. This is a joke. You're going to give a speech on the state of the Republican Party, but it's cloaked. It's not really being objective. Those are Asa Hutchinson's campaign talking points, and the premise of his statement is that we have large majorities that are going to come out. Do you know why the large majorities of Republicans are going to come out this next election cycle? Because Asa Hutchinson's the third most popular governor in some weird national poll that they did. Are you kidding me? That's what you lead with? Now you tell me, is that favoritism or is that not favoritism? It sounds like favoritism to me. And we haven't even gotten to what made the headlines. Here's the headline: Talk Business and Politics before we go to break. The first sentence. Arkansas Republican Party Chairman Doyle Webb thinks Asa Hutchinson will handily defeat challenger Jan Morgan in the upcoming Republican primary this spring. I have a perspective you're not going to get anywhere else. Stay tuned, because did he really say the words handily defeat? I'll tell you when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to triplrpawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's triplrpawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, triplrpawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Okay, so now that I've firmly established there is clear favoritism that's already taken place for anyone that would care to actually look at what's been going on within this Republican Party primary. It's clear Jan Morgan is not the establishment, and this is the understatement of the century, and Asa Hutchinson is the establishment, okay? And the current leadership of the RPA is the establishment because their mentality is this: I've worked my whole life to build a party, and now I just don't want to see it divided. I don't want to see it torn down. Well, okay, what if you have built something that was initially good, but now it's just been co-opted by the same forces that you were fighting your entire career? And that's what's going on here, because we essentially don't have any of the real reforms the people have been voting for. Okay, so here we go. How did this all start? What happened this weekend? Well, Doyle Webb, who is the chairman of the Republican Party of Arkansas, not supposed to show favoritism according to the party rules, and Democratic Party Chairman Michael John Gray were at the Northeast Arkansas Political Animals Club on Friday. And we just played for you the speech Doyle Webb gave where he basically was regurgitating Asa Hutchinson's campaign talking points. Again, he's supposed to be neutral, guys. He's supposed to be neutral. Believe him. Believe him. He's neutral. He knows how to be fair. Unbelievable. And so we get this first... Show the article. Talk Business and Politics. George Jared reports, quote, Arkansas Republican Party Chairman Doyle Webb thinks Governor Asa Hutchinson will handedly defeat challenger Jan Morgan in the upcoming Republican primary this spring. Okay, handedly defeat. Okay, now skipping down, third paragraph, a primary will be good for the party and it will help to bring out the base, Webb said. When the dust settles, Hutchinson will be the nominee of the party. Since becoming governor, the state's unemployment rate has dipped to historic lows, as have state income tax cuts, he said. Quote, I don't think she'll do any damage. All right, let's stop right there. This story gets picked up by KATV, which is ABC affiliate. And KATV tweets this. Arkansas Republican Party Chairman Webb, quote, Governor Hutchinson will handedly defeat Jan Morgan. Now, notice, just basic journalism here, notice that handedly defeat in the Talk Business article was not in quotations. Now, this is going to make sense here in just a minute. But now it is in quotations from KATV News, okay? All right, so then they write the article, and you can see the full article up there. We have it. Republican Party Chairman Doyle Webb thinks Asa Hutchinson will handily defeat challenger Jan Morgan. And they essentially are just reposting, okay, what the Talk Business and Politics article was. And so I was very curious here. Aside from the other stuff that Webb said that I think is wrong in terms of, in an attempt to stay neutral, I really wanted to know, did he say that? Did he say handedly defeat? Because I have the audio, and I didn't hear it in the audio, so I reached out to Talk Business and Politics, the person who wrote the original story, George Jared, and I asked him, hey, am I missing something? Do you have an exact quote on handedly defeat? And this is what he sent back. We have a copy. Here it is. This is George Jared, and he responds to me. He says, hey, Paul, he didn't use the word handedly, but it was obvious from his body language, words, and his tone that he thinks Asa will easily win the primary. Okay, so that is his response. That is George Jared's response. And so here is the next question that you won't hear anyone ask. You're not going to hear this anywhere else. Are you ready for it? Why didn't Doyle Webb demand a retraction? He has had all weekend to say, I never said that. I never said that that he would handily defeat her. I never said that. Why did he never retract the story? Why is he allowing what some might say is, a little bit of relaxed journalism? Why would he let this continue to go? I'll tell you why. Because if you demanded a retraction, you'd actually have to stand up for Jan Morgan. That's why. If he demanded a retraction and said, I didn't actually say handily defeat, you would actually have to be saying something positive about Jan Morgan. And instead, he accepts the story and he says something negative about her, and we have that audio for you next.
The hard work they've done. I've been one of the most enthusiastic supporters of them in the past. When I thought they've been attacked unfairly, I would say so publicly. But for the last 4 years, I have been battling in court over their enforcement of a deadline for independence, which had repeatedly been ruled unconstitutional. And they waged this battle in a very determined manner all the way to the Supreme Court and back. I don't want to say right here on the radio to the whole state, to God and everybody, I'm thankful for the support and understanding of my wife throughout this struggle. This is not something that most women would appreciate their husbands spending a lot of time and money on, but no matter how outgunned I was, she never wavered. So, I mean, I've learned what the better half means in the last 4 years. But the bottom line is they have a conflict, and they handle the conflict differently than I would have. The legislature has put them in this position. They take an oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the state of Arkansas.
Yeah.
What do you do when the laws of the state of Arkansas are not constitutional? Now, the way they handled that conflict was you just back the laws of the state of Arkansas to the hilt. And that's an easy choice to make when everybody's a Republican or a Democrat. But, I mean, if it was me, I would do it differently. I would balance whether or not that law was constitutional. I mean, I believe in a system of checks and balances. That's why I think we need independence, because right now everything is, Asa Hutchinson, he is the governor. He's a Republican. The legislators are Republicans. Basically, there's no checks and balances. So I think the executive branch, like the Secretary of State, could advise the legislature, you know what, these laws you're sending me, they're not constitutional. I'm going to recommend we not even challenge. I mean, I think that should be a possibility in a situation where this law has been ruled unconstitutional several times before. And
they just do it again. So it's ruled unconstitutional several times before, and so they make a law that just they don't just pass an identical law. It had to be a little different.
It's pretty much an identical law.
Really?
I mean,
wow.
as far as the date being moved up, yeah, it was pretty much identical. I mean, the court rulings say you cannot go earlier than May, and they still put it in the 1st of March when the signatures were due. So, yeah, it was pretty much, and that's the one thing I've gone through this process, and I wonder about that. It's almost like they cheat you, and the judge slaps their hand, but he doesn't. There's no. I wonder what the deterrent is. I wonder what will keep them from doing it again the next time. And I mean, and the judge has given us a heads up, so he is going to declare the law unconstitutional, and I just don't know the scope.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
The reporting here is just amazing to me. I mean, if you read the original Talk Business and Politics article, they're attributing this to Doyle Webb, but they don't actually put it in quotes. A primary will be good for the party. It'll help bring out the base. Webb did actually say that. I've got that queued up here in just a minute. When the dust settles, Hutchinson will be the nominee of the party. Since becoming governor, the state's unemployment rate. Okay, so he didn't say in the audio I have, when the dust settles, he's going to be the nominee of the party. But he did talk about how the state's unemployment rate is dipped and blah, 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 and how Ace is the most, popular governor in the South. And so essentially, it's very clear. If you take the totality of what happened on Friday, it is clear that Doyle Webb wants Asa Hutchinson to be the nominee. And by the way, everybody knows it. Let's quit pretending. You're just having to do this false cloak of objectivity. But the interesting thing is, again, he did not say that Jan will handily defeat Asa will handily defeat Jan Morgan. He didn't actually say that, but that gets reported, it gets picked up, and it gets retweeted. By the way, it gets retweeted by Asa supporters on social media, and Doyle Webb will not come out and demand a retraction, and again, because he is actually furthering this narrative. By not coming out and demanding a retraction, now it's just, okay, you're complicit in this, and so what happened when KATV puts out the story on the Talk Business and puts it in quotes. Doyle Webb, Asa will handily defeat Jan Morgan. That's attributed to Doyle Webb, according to KATV. Right there, you see it. Handily defeat Jan Morgan. So Jan Morgan calls for the resignation. Go to this next tweet. Jan Morgan calls for the resignation of Doyle Webb for violation of party rules. Back up a little bit. It's going to be the next one. Yeah, right there. Here's Janelle Lilly. From KATV, Republican primary gubernatorial candidate Jan Morgan calls for the resignation of RPA Chairman Doyle Webb after Webb told at Roby Brock that Asa Hutchinson will handily defeat Jan Morgan. Rules prohibit RPA from endorsing primary candidates. That's exactly right. Matter of fact, even John Brummett was like, she has a point. Everybody's taking, but it's hilarious, everybody's taking the attributed quote to Doyle Webb as handily defeat as truth, because that's what KATV reported. That's what Talk Business and Politics initially reported. But again, we have from the author saying he didn't actually say. The author of the story, George Jared, wrote me back, thankfully, and he said he didn't actually say handily defeat. So why doesn't Doyle Webb demand a retraction? Again, because it would put Jan Morgan in a positive light. That's why he doesn't demand a retraction. Okay? Instead, go to the last audio clip we have. Instead, Doyle Webb says this.
Yesterday, Channel 7 spoke with Doyle Webb, the chairman of the Republican Party in Arkansas, after calls for his resignation. Talk Business and Politics reported at a Political Animals Club meeting on Friday that Webb predicted that Governor Asa Hutchinson would handily defeat challenger Jan Morgan in the upcoming primary.
So
Morgan accused Webb of violating party rules and called on him to resign. Here's what Webb had to say today.
Of course I'm not going to resign. When a candidate who we welcomes into the party looks to social media to determine what a chairman says and doesn't understand my history in the party and how fair I have been with all candidates, I'm not going to resign. I just encourage her to get active in the party so that she understands how the party works.
Okay, what a hit job.
Overnight, Senator
what an absolute hit job. Looks to social media. Chairman Webb, she wasn't looking to social media. She was looking at KATV, who you are talking to right now in this interview, which you could have said, I never said handily defeat, but you don't. And instead, you try to turn it around on her. Well, instead of looking to social media, and she should realize what I've done for this party all my life and how fair I've always been, and what's going on here? I think it's obvious what's going on here.
He also says that she needs to get involved with the party. I'm pretty sure she's pretty involved. She's been to a lot of she's been all over the state.
She has been involved with the party, and she's actually been involved with the cause on the national front for a very long time. And was honestly backing the citizen, was the spokesperson for Citizens for Trump back when Asa and the boys were back in Marco Rubio. Okay. So anyway, this whole thing is fascinating. What has transpired? Because I mean, all right. Can we just take a moment here? You're actually getting the truth from this program, okay? Like you're actually getting what has happened and how people are reacting to stories. Now, why would Doyle Webb not ask for a retraction? That's the question you have to ask. That is to me the number one question on this whole thing. Why wouldn't he ask for a retraction? I mean, if somebody writes an article about me or somebody writes an article about you and gets the quote wrong, what are you going to just go? Are you going to let them go along with it, and then it creates a big storm out of it? I mean, Doyle's been getting text messages from activists saying you need to resign because you said this. I mean, that's what's been going on. Listen to let me go to back to Friday. This is the Northeast Arkansas Political Animals Club. And let's get the question. This is the actual question from George Jared. Jan Morgan giving Asa a run for his money. That's not even the question. Basically, Asa Hutchinson has a primary opponent. Will Jan do any damage? And here's what Doyle says.
Either one of you guys can answer this. Asa Hutchinson has a primary opponent, Jan Morgan. How much damage do you think that she could possibly do to him in the primaries?
I guess I'll answer that one first. Yes. I'm interested here. I don't think that she will do any damage. Okay? That's good. I don't think that she'll do any damage. I think that we're a party that's open. I think that now we have primaries, and primaries are good. It activates the base, and we'll come back together to vote for the nominee in any race.
Okay, stop. All right, so that's Doyle. Now, this audio, I want to make this clear. I want to give a hat tip, and this is audio that was posted on Facebook at NEA Report. Okay, that's NEA Report. They did a video of this, and that's where. And you can, by the way, you can go there to that full video at the 26-minute mark is where we are right now in the video, the 26-minute mark. Okay, that's NEA Report. They're actually really. I really appreciate their coverage and all the stuff they've been doing in the community in NEA. It's a really good resource. But this is their video / audio here. Notice what he says. I don't think she'll do any damage. Okay, that's his initial comment. There's a pause, and he has to get a microphone. Then he says, I don't think she'll do any damage. Primaries are a good thing. Okay, and everything else. Primaries are a good thing. Blah blah blah. We're going to come back. And we'll support the nominee. Now, he doesn't say the nominee Asa. He doesn't say the nominee Jan. He just says we're going to support the nominee. But somehow, and if you go back and listen to what George Jared said, his body language, his words, his speech on how great Asa was, the talking points of Asa's campaign, everything, if you go back and take the totality, it is clear, it was clear to at least George Jared, according to his reporting, that Doyle thinks that Asa will handily defeat Jan, and that's what gets reported, and then the whole thing goes from there. Now, what do the Democrats say? What does Michael John Gray say? What does Michael John Gray think about Jan Morgan and her candidacy for governor? Listen.
So obviously that's more for the chairman's what damage it would do in the party. I think the only answer I'd have to that is when you start seeing the divisive politics that candidate for Governor Morgan is promoting, that's bad for Arkansas. It doesn't allow to have those conversations that we need to have, that understanding that it's okay to disagree as long as we're thinking about people. That's the damage I see, is to continue to promote the worst of, all due respect, Mr. Chairman, the worst of some of the elements of a growing Republican Party, and that could do some real damage to even act like that's normal to be like that.
Stop. Hang on, keep going, just for a second. I want everyone to make sure.
All right, George had a really good question.
Stop. All right, not a word of protest from Doyle Webb about the Republican Party base. The Democrats, the Michael John Gray, the party chairman, he just trashed basically pretty much everyone that's listening to this program right now. All of you, the base. That if you're thinking about supporting Jan Morgan, or you are supporting Jan Morgan, you are the worst of the party. This is a deplorables moment, quite frankly, that we are the deplorables. Bad for Arkansas. Worst of the Republican Party. This is, ladies and gentlemen, it's pretty immense, right? It's pretty dense, right? Bad for Arkansas. Not a word of protest. Not a word of protest. So where do we go from here? What do we do from here? I mean, Chairman Webb, you heard him. You heard him on KATV. He doesn't think that he should resign. Okay, all right. I mean, I don't expect him to. Just because I don't think anybody's going to. I mean, folks, if they won't ask Jake Files to resign, Senator Jake Files, the head of the Revenue and Tax Committee in the Senate, who has been named in a sworn FBI affidavit as committing wire fraud. I mean, if they won't ask him to resign publicly, if Asa won't ask him to resign publicly, of course, they didn't want to do that because that would have triggered a special election, and State Representative Matt Pitch, who's in line for the promotion, wouldn't be allowed to run in a special election. Okay, so they made sure. See how they make sure all their little ducks are in a row, and I promise you, there's been some RPA meetings about that. It's my speculation, but I wasn't born yesterday, and neither were any of you. We see what's going on here. I don't know where we go from here. I mean, I know he says primaries are a good thing. I agree with him. Matter of fact, Chairman Webb has been on this program before. Chairman Webb's welcome to come back on this program and explain, by the way, anything he wants to about this. But I was watching this story unfold all weekend, and I was watching when I got that email back, and I found out he didn't actually say handily defeat. I was like, okay, well, and I was talking to a member of the Republican Party last night via text. I was talking to this person, and we were discussing, how the story appears to have just been inaccurate. That this talk business and politics story was inaccurate from the beginning. It appeared like not entirely, but I mean, if you say handily defeat, and maybe it's more KATV's fault for picking up on a quote that wasn't actually a quote in the story. That you have more of an opinion here about what is going on in the body language and the words that he was using. And then you get the quote, or you get the question, which is, do you think she's going to do any damage? And he says, no, I'm not going to do any damage. I mean, it's very easy to interpret that, especially after you've seen a campaign speech for Asa Hutchinson delivered by the RPA chairman. It's very easy to interpret that, I could see, as saying, all right, you don't think Jan Morgan will do any damage to Asa. Another way to interpret that would be, there's not going to be any damage done to the establishment of the political party. You could also say, I mean, if you listen to Michael John Gray's comments about how Jan Morgan supporters are the worst of the base, there are people in the Republican Party and the RPA that believe that as well. There are people in the RPA today, there are establishment Republicans today, who also believe that Jan Morgan supporters who claim to be Republicans and conservatives are the worst of the party. I certainly don't believe that. Is it safe to say that both Doyle Webb, who is the Republican chair, and Michael John Gray, who is the Democrat chair, both want Asa Hutchinson to be the Republican nominee? Is that a stretch? Honestly, if we're in Realville and we actually sit down and we look at the fact that Doyle Webb has blocked Jan Morgan on social media, he's welcome to come on and explain that. That Doyle Webb called the Washington County, chairman to talk about it. Let me say this: to talk about a Facebook post. And we interviewed the chairman, and I asked him if he would have taken the post down if Doyle hadn't called, and I think we all know the answer to that. The county chairman resolution basically saying that we're autonomous and the ASA and the RPA establishment need to leave county committees alone when it comes to guests. I mean, we can go down the list here. If we're in Realville, does anyone honestly expect us to believe that Doyle Webb wants Jan Morgan to be the nominee? I mean, we know the Democrats don't. It just seems like there's a weird unity here. And we keep seeing this. 3 weeks ago, during the budget appropriation hearings, we had Democrat senators standing up for Asa Hutchinson's appropriation budget, the recommendation. They were standing up and speaking against conservatives who were trying to make very small and reasonable cuts. And the Democrats are standing up for Asa's budget. Folks, this happens all the time. Right? You have John Brummett, a liberal, progressive journalist, writing hit pieces on Donald Trump, but writing praise pieces on Asa Hutchinson. At what point What would Asa Hutchinson have to do to not get your support if you're an establishment person? I really would love to know. What would he have to do? Okay, he's advocated for tax increases. He's passed tax increases. Okay, he finds primary challengers for the conservatives that have better voting records than the establishment Republicans. What else would he have to do? And if your answer is, well, he'd have to leave the Republican Party and become a Democrat, that's the only way I would ever oppose him. If that's your answer, I don't know what you're committed to. Okay? We have words versus action, words versus works. And Asa Hutchinson has a record. And that's why you are seeing this. That's why you're seeing him buy Twitter bots, and spending this money on social media, because Jan Morgan actually has grassroots support and a real social media following, and that's very scary to them. I think this entire hour we've done a very good job of laying out what happened and, really kind of cutting through the spin here. Again, the question is, why didn't Doyle Webb ask for a retraction when he did not say handedly defeat? Didn't say those words. As a matter of fact, if you listen to what he said, even though he said Jan's not going to do any damage to Asa, he goes on to say primaries are a good thing. Now, I can see through it because we played for you his actual speech, which was campaign talking points. But why didn't he push? Why didn't he say, no, this is wrong? Because it took off like wildfire. It went from a talk business story to KATV to a follow-up report on TV where then they asked him, are you going to resign? And he takes that opportunity. Because let's be clear here. Asking Doyle Webb to resign for saying that Asa would handily defeat Jan is picking sides. It's affecting, at the very least, the psychology of the situation. And by the way, I'm very aware of the psychological effect this program has on the people in the Marble Palace. We got to take a break, folks. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. My name is Paul Harrell. Good morning to you. I've been awake for a long time getting ready for this because I just couldn't wait to give you news and analysis this morning. You can find out more. Go to conduitnews.com or check us out. We're broadcasting live via video, facebook.com/Conduit News. Back in just a moment.
This is Mother Government. My people. The promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works, Obamacare, private option has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues, from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are two matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I mean, you do realize that when you do realize that when KATV picked up on the story over at Talk Business and Politics, and they said that handily defeat. Doyle Webb says Asa will handily defeat. Of course, we've established, according to the person who was there, the reporter who wrote this, George Jarrett, he said he didn't actually say handily defeat. KATV picks it up, attributes it directly to Doyle Webb, and when that happens, everything freaks out. I mean, you should have seen social media. Everything just kind of exploded this week in saying Doyle Webb should resign. And we established this whole hour that this is actually a long train of abuses, whether or not he said it or not. But I want you to realize that then Michael John Gray goes on, the Democrat chairman, and says that Jan Morgan's divisive, and she promotes, quote, the worst elements of the Republican base. Do you realize that yesterday, KATV came out with another tweet, and it was an In Case You Missed It tweet, and they attributed Michael John Gray's worst elements of the party, quote, to Doyle Webb. They attributed it to Doyle. Now, it's not up anymore. The tweet has been taken down. At least I couldn't find it this morning, but I think it had been replaced with just the original headline of handily defeat. They're still sticking with handily defeat. And so Doyle's been asked to resign. Jan Morgan says you should resign. I've gone down the list of really reasons why he should, by the way, aside from this handily defeat. But the fact that he was given a campaign talking point speech for Asa, literally, he said that large majorities are going to come out and vote Republican because Asa Hutchinson's the third most popular governor in the nation. How is that not a campaign talking point? How are you not in the tank for Asa? And any reasonable person. So KATV attributes a quote to Doyle that he didn't say. Doyle, given the opportunity to retract and say I never said that, instead turns it around to attack Jan Morgan. Listen.
I'm not going to resign. When a candidate who we welcomes into the party looks to social media to determine what a chairman says and doesn't understand my history in the party and how fair I have been with all candidates, I'm not going to resign. I just encourage her to get active in the party so that she understands.
Doyle, if you've been fair, why'd you block her on social media in September? Why did you block her? If you've been fair and you have this history, why did you block her? I mean, that's the first thing you did that showed bias. That's a violation of rules, favoritism. Did you block Asa? Have you blocked Asa Hutchinson on social media? You're the one that brought up social media, Doyle, so that's the reason I ask. You're the one that brought up social media. And by the way, Jan wasn't looking to social media. Jan was looking to a report from KATV. The whole thing, folks, is amazing. Instead of asking for a retraction that would have required the chairman of the GOP, Doyle Webb, to actually stand up for Jan Morgan and say, you know what, I didn't say that Asa would handily defeat. That actually would hurt Asa, right? That would give, he didn't say that. He didn't say that. So maybe Asa isn't going to handily defeat Jan. Maybe Jan is going to handily defeat Asa. It leaves the door open for the possibility, right? I'm telling you, man, these people are trying to protect the status quo at all costs. And that status quo is bigger government. Because we have a Republican establishment that is in the leadership that they have tried in the last 2 years at least to grow government, to raise taxes. They refuse to lead us out of Obamacare in this state. And the status quo remains intact. We got one more hour coming your way next. Don't go anywhere.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
As far as the date being moved up, yeah, it was pretty much identical. I mean, the court rulings say you cannot go earlier than May, and they still put it in the 1st of March when the signatures were due. So, yeah, it was pretty much, and that's the one thing I've gone through this process, and I wonder about that. It's almost like they cheat you, and the judge slaps their hand, but he doesn't. There's no. I wonder what the deterrent is. I wonder what will keep them from doing it again the next time. And I mean, and the judge has given us a heads up, so he is going to declare the law unconstitutional, and I just don't know the scope of the relief, Paul. Is it only going to apply to me, or is it going to apply to anybody? You know, if it applies narrowly to me, like take an office like lieutenant governor, do I want to run for lieutenant governor as an independent, and no senators can run for lieutenant governor as an independent, even though, that the lieutenant governor deals with the Senate a lot.
Yeah.
So to me, it impacts the decision. I really wasn't. I'm doing it because I want to keep my options open, but really, I want to keep everybody's options open. It's not really about me.
Do you look? Okay, so let's assume it's the best case scenario, and not only does he rule that it's unconstitutional, but he rules not just in your favor, but it affects everybody who wants to file at the last minute as an independent candidate, and not, as you said, one of the clubs. Do you expect the parties to get together? I love what you said. That quote at the beginning: bipartisan. Could just mean a larger deception than normal is being planned. Do you expect them to try to thwart the prospects of an independent being able to file in some other way?
Well, now they already have. They already have, Paul. So I call on the legislature and listen. They may have done the wrong thing repeatedly in the past, but I believe in repentance. I believe in forgiveness, and I call on the legislature to change the law, which the judge is going to find unconstitutional at the first opportunity to do so, which is really the fiscal session, because with a supermajority vote, they can take up non-fiscal issues.
Yes.
So, and really, I mean, I asked the judge probably is not listening, but, I hope the relief is written so that it doesn't just apply to me. If anybody turns in their signatures, because what the state was arguing was, well, just apply it to Mark if you really have to apply it, because what if somebody's already collecting signatures and they turn it in early and you move the date back? Well, I say have a broad view. If they turn in the signatures when they file, that's fine. If they wait till May 1st to turn in the signatures, that's fine too. And that can be done. But, quit putting the Secretary of State in a position of trying to defend laws which have previously been declared unconstitutional on multiple occasions. I think that's the minimum the state legislature can do. But I also ask them to be proactive, Paul, because they need to change the other ballot access laws they've added since 2012, which are of dubious constitutionality. Don't even wait until the state becomes subject to a suit over them. Change the laws that you put in after 2012 to make it harder for independents. And I'll give you an example. Arkansas Code 77103B, it requires independent candidates and independent candidates only to sign a vague independent petition affidavit. Now, Paul, judges and prosecutors often collect signatures for ballot access, but they are not required to sign a similar affidavit. Party candidates, of course, they don't collect signatures, so they don't have to sign such an affidavit either. The law puts independent candidates, and them alone, in the position of having to swear to a statement that they often cannot possibly be sure is true. Like if I run for lieutenant governor, I'm going to have help collecting 10,000 signatures. So I don't know everything in that affidavit is true. I might unknowingly make a false statement. And this is the kicker, and it makes me wonder if they didn't plan it out this way. Under the recently passed so-called ethics amendment, making a false statement related to elections is punishable by, hold on, you ready? A lifetime ban from public office.
Wow.
There's no exception for unknowingly making such a statement. So if I sign a statement, yep, all the signatures were collected within the dates.
Hang on, and that was in the new ethics law by now indicted Senator John Woods?
Yes, it was a deceptively named ethics law. Which
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, so we named the Hour One podcast, Oh, the Tangled Webs We Weave. That's what we named the Hour One podcast. Webb is spelt with two B's, not one, because we talked about Republican Party Chairman Doyle Webb all of last hour, and the pickle that he refused to get himself out of, because it would have meant really distancing himself in a very public manner from Asa Hutchinson, and he decided not to do that. At least that's my speculation. If you missed the first hour, I've got to encourage you to go get the podcast, Conduit News Radio podcast, which is going to be on iTunes, going to be on SoundCloud. You can go to conduitnews.com and click on Conduit News Radio, and then that's going to take you to the podcasts. You'll have the option podcast and that sort of thing. You can get it on the website if you don't want to go to iTunes or SoundCloud. So I would encourage everybody to do that. It's probably I think it's the news of the week. That's why we made our whiteboard Tangled Web. What happened this weekend, the reporting, the relaxed journalism. We exposed that. We have the true story, the true story of what happened this weekend between Doyle Webb, Jan Morgan, and Asa Hutchinson is that first hour podcast, and I would encourage you to get it. The only thing that I left out of that podcast, the only thing I left out of the first hour today, this morning, is this post right here. 17 hours ago from Osceola, Arkansas, Dorothy Crockett over in Mississippi County. She wrote this: I have been a lifelong Republican, and for the past 26 years, since my husband passed away, being involved with the Republican Party of Arkansas has been a big part of my life. I treasure all my Republican friends. In early spring, Mississippi County Republican Committee voted to invite Jan Morgan, Second Amendment advocate, as one of our Lincoln Day dinner speakers. The morning of September 16th, I received a call from a member of the governor's staff telling me we should uninvite Jan Morgan, telling me if we did not, we would be unable to have any other speakers at our event. I told the caller I was the past chair of Mississippi County Republican Committee and gave him the current chair's contact information, but I did express my opinion our committee would not uninvite our guest speaker. On September 17th, this phone call was followed up with an email, which was sent to our chair and both the owner of our venue, and I was copied. I believe our committee was one of the first to be threatened, but we were not the last. I worked very hard on the governor's first unsuccessful race for governor and again on his successful race, so you can imagine how disappointed I was in what I called strong-arm tactics. After much thought, I made the decision to support Jan Morgan. As most of you know, unlike many of my Republican friends, I was one of the first to be an ardent supporter of President Donald Trump. I was told there was no way he could win. I'm being told the same thing about my enthusiastic support for Jan. Jan just may be Arkansas's Donald Trump. Arkansas voters will make that decision May 22nd. Until then, I'm on the Jan Morgan for governor train. I respect everyone's right to support the candidate of choice, and I respectfully ask to be given the same privilege. As an afterthought, when my husband and I moved to Arkansas in 1956, being a Republican was definitely a novelty. So here we have somebody who is truly from the grassroots, who's been a Republican when you couldn't even really be a Republican and go to church in Arkansas. There was a time when that was, I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I'm sure there were some churches that were like that. And here we have her saying, you know, I really don't appreciate the strong-arm tactics. I don't appreciate them trying, them demanding fealty. And it didn't just happen in Mississippi County, folks. There were parts of Craighead County that experienced this, Baxter County, and now in Washington County. We went over all of this. We didn't go over the Dorothy Crockett post, but we went over all of this last hour of the podcast, and you need to go get it. I'm telling you, you need to go watch or listen to it because it's analysis and news that you're not going to get anywhere else because the mainstream media in Arkansas really they've really been caught in what is a blatant error of attributing a quote to something that wasn't actually said, but then not anyway. It exposes them all. It exposes the mainstream media and it exposes Doyle Webb. Oh, what a tangled web we weave. You say fake news? Is that what you said? So much fake news. Yeah, there was a lot. Very interesting stuff. Yeah, I love this, by the way. Piggybacking on what the Democrat chairman said on Friday, Democrat Party Chairman Michael John Gray, saying that Jan Morgan is the worst, brings out the worst of the Republican Party, the worst elements of the Republican Party. Skip on Facebook, and I pinned this comment on Facebook. Supporting the entire Republican platform makes us the worst of the party. Well, yeah, according to Democrats and according to, I mean, the silence of Doyle Webb after he said that, Doyle Webb didn't refute that. That's offensive to me. Right? I mean, if you're going to give a speech like Doyle Webb did that same day and recite Asa Hutchinson's campaign talking points, and you want to claim that you're neutral when you're not, and then we get all trashed. All of us get trashed in the grassroots who disagree with the direction the Republican establishment has taken this state, and you have a viable candidate in Jan Morgan, which just the fact that she's running is a victory, and there's not a word of protest from Doyle Webb when we get called the deplorables. I mean, it's essentially the deplorables comment all over again. There's not a word of protest from him. Not a word. So this idea that he is neutral is garbage. It's not real. In Realville, in reality, we know that the RPA, now, not the RPA at the local level. The RPA is huge. The RPA is big. I'm talking about the RPA at the building in Little Rock that sits around and strategizes with the governor and his lackeys on which true conservative needs to be primaried because they didn't go along with ACE's agenda. And those meetings have happened. That's what I'm talking about. In my opinion, those meetings have happened. You can believe me or not. All right, moving on. I'm fired up this morning, folks. I know you can tell. Go listen to the 6 o'clock hour. Conduit for Action. This is something we need to talk about. This is something that's not going to be popular, but conduitforaction.org has this... has an article that they have hit a moral nerve, and it's something that we all need to talk about. Even among those folks on the left who claim to be Republicans, who believe in the phony economic development, even the Democrats who claim, who believe that economic development is Arkansas taking an existing Arkansas business's taxpayer dollars and giving it to a private company, having them move here with the hopes that they create jobs someday. And then, of course, the politicians get to take the credit for creating the jobs when they haven't even been created yet. I think there's a broader issue here. Conduit for Action has brought it up when it comes to China. When it comes to China, Arkansas Economic Plan, jobs from China, a.k.a. destroyer of churches. This is a real conversation I do believe we need to have. High Arkansas taxes have consequences. According to the Tax Foundation, Arkansas is one of the higher tax states in the nation. Arkansas's high taxes make it difficult to attract new businesses. This means Arkansas must rely on incentives, giving away money to attract business, and you pay the bill. The big economic news in 2017 was Governor Asa Hutchinson's trips to China and announcements that, thanks to financial incentives you pay for, Chinese businesses will open manufacturing plants in Arkansas. With Arkansas's high taxes and Governor Asa Hutchinson supporting more taxes, which he does, apparently Arkansas's current best hope for adding jobs in Arkansas is to give away your tax money as incentives to businesses from China. Sorry, I had to get a little coffee. Not that I need any more today. I was talking to, by the way, I was talking to a guy who used to be in radio. He was saying he would drink like 14, he had like a 9 to noon show, and he would drink like 14 cups of coffee, but he didn't know that his producer was actually switching him to decaf after like the first hour. Like, wow, that's like, that's some deception right there. The big economic news in 2017. Okay, we know that. Money to businesses from China. Here is what the best hope looks like. The Chinese government recently destroyed the Golden Lampstand Church, which was a Christian church reportedly having 50,000 members. The destruction of the church is not an isolated event. For example, in late December, the Chinese destroyed a Catholic church in the same province. And you can look at this video. It's from The Guardian, and there are many videos, of the Chinese government destroying churches. Now, why do they destroy churches over there? Well, it's because they believe that the gospel of Jesus Christ is the enemy to their authority. And it is. Let me say that again. It is. In this country, we established our country in part with the Declaration of Independence that says that our rights come from God, from a creator, that we're endowed with certain unalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, okay? That is something very rare in human history, where America established our country in a form of humility compared with other countries. We said that the state does not have the ultimate power on this earth. We said that God is sovereign over it. He is sovereign over man. He is sovereign over our rights, that he has endowed us with certain freedoms, with certain rights, okay? That is how we founded our country. And now, thanks to Asa, we're going to do business with China that destroys churches. And it's very important for you to understand why they destroy churches. They destroy churches because a belief in a higher power means that you believe in something that's greater than the state. And that is something that communism cannot abide by. You know how we say that Sharia law over in the Middle East and the United States Constitution that is about equal protection for everybody and freedom and that sort of stuff and limiting government, how Sharia law and the Constitution cannot coexist governing the same society, and it can't. Well, neither can a people that believe that man is his own God and men form a government and the government decides what the values of a society are. That cannot abide in the United States Constitution ever. Now, we have found a bridge, and that bridge is money. That bridge is profit. That bridge, in this case, with Asa, is political capital to be able to stand in front of the drooling reporters who are just going to write down Asa Hutchinson and the Chinese, and there's going to be 30,000 jobs created in the next 10 years, or whatever they say, okay? That's the bridge. Somehow we don't really care about them destroying churches as long as we're going to benefit financially and economically from it. Now, again, I told you this is going to hit a moral nerve. It's going to make a lot of people upset because they don't like this kind of stuff even being brought to the forefront. But it certainly does need to be talked about because, again, America was established in humility. Maybe we're not so humble now, but we were. We had a lot of our founding fathers. In fact, most of them were theologians, okay? And you probably kind of have to be if you're going to sign a document that means that if you fail in your revolution, you're going to be drawn and quartered, okay? So just think about that for a second, right? How many of our current politicians would even dare to sign their own death warrants for freedom and liberty? Most of them, and most of them down at the Marble Palace, would be redcoat sympathizers, period. Okay? That's just the world we live in today. They would protect the status quo at all costs because they don't want to risk their lives and they don't want to risk their fortunes. And they don't really care anything about honor because it's the Marble Palace and we're still running on the fumes of the Clinton machine. Here in Arkansas, they refuse to reform it. So instead of relying on businesses from places that destroy churches and persecute Christians, Arkansas needs to reduce taxes to make it an attractive place for American businesses to locate. How about that, Asa? For Arkansas businesses to grow and a better place for people to work and live. That sounds like a great idea. Yet Arkansas is still on the path of maintaining high taxes or ever increasing or even increasing them. For example, Governor Asa Hutchinson insisted that tax relief for military retirement pay be funded by imposing other taxes on Arkansans. Then he went even farther and used the bill as an excuse to raise millions more and used the legislation as an excuse to send another $9 million to shore up Medicaid and his Obamacare Medicaid expansion. Governor Hutchinson still wants to impose an internet sales tax and more taxes on gasoline and diesel fuel. Meanwhile, Arkansas legislators continue to collect pay for attending Little Rock meetings on the Tax Reform and Relief Legislative Task Force. But the task force is not focused on reducing the overall burden in Arkansas, and there are sources to back that up. Mainly, Speaker of the House Jeremy Gillum's opening statement the first day the task force met. Same plan, high taxes, and giving tax dollars away to attract businesses from a country that is the destroyer of churches. Arkansas's high taxes have consequences. Tax and spend politicians are counting on you to let them stay in office and continue high taxes. Wouldn't it be easier to lower taxes and say no to China? Right? Maybe we need a Just Say No campaign. Just say no to Chinese businesses coming over here who have completely different values than us. We got to take a break. Back in a minute.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to triplrpawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's triplrpawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, triplrpawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
That's some good trumpet right there, but the bass line is even better. Welcome back, folks. It's Conduit News Radio. My name is Paul Harrell, and you can give me a phone call or a text message, 870-275-9799, or sound off at facebook.com/Conduit News. We're going to be talking with Fort Smith attorney Joey McCutcheon coming up at 7:33. That's 7:33 about FOIA and some local stuff going up there in the Fort Smith area. I'm telling you, it is amazing to see what an attorney can do who is actually trying to hold government accountable. I mean, Joe McCutcheon can be, a big government, lack of transparency, government worst nightmare. And so we're going to be talking to him at 7:33. It's always a pleasure to have him on. Folks, in case you missed the first hour, I want to remind you, got to go back and got to check out the first hour. We broke down everything that you're not hearing from the mainstream media concerning what happened with the Republican Party of Arkansas Chairman Doyle Webb supposedly saying in public that Asa would handily defeat Jan Morgan. Jan Morgan then calls for Doyle's resignation, but then we've exposed that Doyle didn't actually say that, but KATV reported that he said it. And it started this whole frenzy, and instead of Doyle demanding a retraction and standing up for Jan Morgan, Joe, play it again. You're going to have to find it. Skip the beginning of the KATV report. Instead, KATV talks about and asks Doyle Webb, well, are you going to resign? And instead of saying, well, you guys got the story wrong, Doyle Webb then uses it to attack Jan Morgan. And listen to this. These are inaccuracies. Listen.
Resign. When a candidate who we welcomes into the party looks to social media to determine what a chairman says and doesn't understand my history in the party and how fair I have been with all candidates, I'm not going to resign. I just encourage her to get active in the party so that she understands how the party works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Stop. So she understands how the party works. Man, there's never been a more of establishment statement than that. I tell you, we gave the entire story. You've got to check it out. It's the first hour. You can get the podcast. It's entitled, Oh, What a Tangled Web We Weave. And or the Tangled Web We Weave. That's hour one of the podcast. It's available at conduitnews.com. Click on Conduit News Radio, or you can get you'll get the full Facebook video here coming up in 30 minutes when we sign off at facebook.com/Conduit News. It's up right now, and so you can get it iTunes, SoundCloud, or conduitnews.com, because you're going to hear the story that nobody else is reporting, and that the mainstream media got this wrong. And instead of clarifying, the question is, why didn't Doyle ask for a retraction? He didn't ask for a retraction because it would mean that he actually would have to say that, no, Asa may not handily defeat Jan Morgan. So that is certainly something to talk about. I'm working on a story that I think is going to be interesting that has to do with Twitter bots. And Asa Hutchinson's use of Twitter bots and what he's actually paying for in social media. You're going to be very intrigued. We've already exposed him doing it once to a very, even mainstream reporters were talking about, how did he get 90 retweets? And look at the retweets. They're all from Saudi Arabia, and they're all bots. And it was on that bogus, that weird story. Tell you what it was. They were in panic mode because Talk Business and Politics released a poll that showed Asa Hutchinson's support among Republicans plummeted from April to October last year by 17 points. And those are your primary turnout. That's your primary turnout. 17 points, people said Asa's not doing the job they want him to among the Republicans. And so they then had their lackeys tweet out a bogus poll about how Asa's the third most popular governor in the country. Like Arkansans care about what other people in the country think. Can we be honest about that? And how come Scott Walker's not on that list? He's not very popular. Well, he actually does the hard stuff and changes the status quo in a blue state like Wisconsin. All right, we got to take a break. We're up against a hard break. We have half an hour of the program left. Back with Fort Smith attorney, Mr. Joey McCutcheon, on freedom of information. Back in a minute.
Wow. Was dishonest in its title, sponsored by a man who has now been indicted for taking bribes. And in it, first, the law sets up a situation where independents and independents alone have to sign this vague affidavit. And then the Ethics Amendment subjects them to a lifetime ban if it's later found out they unknowingly made a false statement.
Wow.
Now, this is going to have a chilling effect on people running for public office as independents.
Yeah.
In particular, with the big offices.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was that a part of their intentions? I don't know. If it was,
of course. I mean, come on. I mean, I'll go out on a limb with you for sure. I'll say it is. You know what's interesting? That same ethics amendment that we all were tricked into vote. Well, I wasn't tricked into voting for it, but a lot of people were. I talked to people who said, "Well, I saw term limits and I thought that was a good thing," and it was deceptively written. But it also gave them the power to go back and amend certain things about that particular law. And one of the things they amended was that if you're a public official and you make a mistake on your campaign finance reports, which people have done, and let's say it's let's say it is pretty cut and dry that this is nefarious, as long
you're busted,
as long as you go back and correct it in 30 days, okay, as long as you go back and correct it in 30 days, then you're good with the Ethics Commission.
Yeah, you caught me stealing. But if I can just pay it back in 30 days,
I'm good
really,
to go.
You can't even.
I'm good to go. That's another thing that was in that quote ethics end quote amendment.
Right. I would like. It was a terrible amendment. It was a trap, like Admiral Akbar says. It's a trap. But basically, the bottom line is that like independent candidates, judges, party candidates, they can know that they will get on the ballot because the judges can go either way. They can collect signatures or they can pay a filing fee equal to 6% of the annual salary of the office. They don't pay it to a party. They pay it directly to the state.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of judges don't do it that way. And, of course, party candidates, they just pay a fee. So the only ones it is not available to under Arkansas law is independent candidates.
Yeah, it's just not right. It's absolutely not right. And we're out of time, Mark, but I'll give you the last word. I can't wait to have you back on once the judge actually hands his ruling down.
People, what the circuit courts decided in this case is already being used all around the country. Yeah, I'm on pins and needles. I want to know. Thanks, Paul.
All right. Mr. Mark Moore, check out the website, folks. It's arneighbors.org. That's arneighbors.org. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell. Good morning. Back in a moment.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us, and welcome back to the program. We have Mr. Joey McCutcheon. He is a Fort Smith attorney, and he is a defender and implementer of the Freedom of Information Act. Joey, welcome back to the program, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So what can you tell us about new developments? I mean, I know you have exposed the city of Fort Smith of essentially conducting business in private. You have also said that you think that this is happening all across Arkansas and government agencies where people are using email to talk about state business or government business without the public's knowledge. Just kind of update us on what got you started and then kind of go to where we are now, please.
Well, what got me started, I guess, was the lack of transparency by the Fort Smith School Board when they took away our Southern heritage, when they took away the Fort Smith Southside mascot, and just started looking at local entities and how they were basically doing business without the public's eye on it. Recently, Judge Fitzhugh signed a summary judgment order in which the Fort Smith board was doing their business by secret email. Even more recent, Mansfield was caught with their hand in the cookie jar when they were trying to remove the powers of the mayor, and I sent a FOIA request, and lo and behold, guess what? They were trying to remove powers secretly also, but this time it was by way of text messages. A couple of nights ago, they agreed that they had violated FOIA, and today I expect that Judge Tabor will sign another order stating that Mansfield violated FOIA by secret emails without giving notice to the public. So just in this area alone, there's three FOIA violations with court orders now. And there's no question, Paul, it's happening across the state. Now the city of Fort Smith, in their infinite wisdom, wants to create an email dump where they can go back and forth on these emails and dump them into a repository, and that's a violation of FOIA too. So if they want to go down that route, unfortunately, it looks like they're going to be making more front page news because they're going to get sued for a FOIA violation again. Professor Robert Steinbuck has written an opinion on the subject and says that if you're going to have an email dump, then you still have to have proper notice to the public, and the public is entitled to monitor live the email or text message meetings. And so,
so we need like a live chat going on. Then,
right?
In order for it to be legal, they're going to basically have to have a chat room where they do all their business. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. They want to have all these emails and then dump them into a repository. We tried to get on it yesterday, and it takes a computer degree to try to get into it. But irrespective of that, it's a violation of FOIA. And Judge Fitzhugh signed an order that said, don't let it happen again, Fort Smith. And it looks like they're either getting bad advice or want to test my resolve and the citizens of Fort Smith's resolve.
So, gosh, I got to think. I mean, listen, I think our Freedom of Information Act is great. And I think when there is no transparency in government, that's when the people's voice, gets diminished. That's when special interests get served. It's where liberty dies. So I really commend you on what you're doing. I bet you there's city employees across the state listening to this thinking, well, what does that mean? Does that mean we can't email? So can you talk a little bit about that? What can they do on email that's not a violation of the Freedom of Information Act?
Well, for example, they can send out information. I mean, we're not trying to prevent for example, our city administrator from sending information to the city board where they can look at it. But what we don't want happening is private email discussions. The court has plainly said that we're entitled to not only see the result, we're also entitled to know why they're making their decision. I mean, it's pretty clear. It's not rocket science. I mean, just like they couldn't go down to the local McDonald's and have a private discussion after they receive information and vote and do all those things, they can't do that on email either, and they can't do it on text messages. And so, I don't care if directors, get together and talk about, what they're going to do this weekend, but when they start discussing public business, that's when our republic gets in trouble because decisions are made without our knowledge. Mansfield was a classic example. They called for the mayor to resign the week before, and I was reading the paper. I'm like, they had to have had a secret meeting. There was just too much uniformity in what they were doing. So the mayor had called me, so I just FOIA'd the documents. Lo and behold, there were all these text messages where they had lined up people to be there, I mean, they had the whole thing staged. They had the votes counted, and a decision had already been made. And so we had a sham public meeting.
So did he resign? Did the mayor of Mansfield resign?
Gosh, no. He's done. He's fighting on tooth and nail because he loves Mansfield. He's doing the best that he absolutely can for the citizens of Mansfield. And this was a coup. I mean, it was over political disagreements. They don't like the way he's holding folks accountable. And hey,
they're taking a cue. They're taking a cue from Peter Strzok and Lisa Page with these secret secret society stuff here, right? I mean, it kind of is. It's like a local deep state, if you will.
I mean, it really is. I mean, there's all politics are local, and we need to be keeping an eye on our local community. The sad fact of the matter is, Paul, the establishment wants a rigged system. We see it in tort reform, where they're trying to rig the system, where a jury can never make a meaningful decision again. It's immoral to place a price tag on the value of human life. We also see a rigged system with sovereign immunity, this sovereign immunity decision.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, my goodness, the Minimum Wage Act no longer applies to state workers. I have to pay minimum wage, but the court has ruled that the state doesn't have to pay minimum wage. I mean, come on. I mean, our Article 2 of our state constitution. That's where the powers. We created government. We the people created government, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the sovereign immunity decision from 2 weeks ago. There's that part in the Constitution that says the state of Arkansas shall never be made a defendant in any of her courts. It reversed a 90s ruling saying that, the state can be sued if the legislature passes something saying it can be sued. So what about the ruling? I mean, I know substantively we've lost our rights. We had privileges. Now we don't have apparently it was a privilege to sue the people of Arkansas or sue the state of Arkansas. So what do you think about the ruling on the constitutional grounds, and where do we go from here?
Well, where do we go from here? Possibly there's really only two routes. One would be a constitutional amendment, and we know how fond the government seems to be. They want to amend away our rights all the time.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. It's unfortunate, but I guess I'm philosophically opposed to the principle that the king can do no wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That decision is inconsistent with Article 2, and as most of the viewers know, and I encourage you to look up our Constitution, particularly Article 2. That's our Bill of Rights, and that decision is inconsistent with our what we call our Declaration of Rights. And to me, that's the most important part of our Constitution. It's inconsistent with, as I said, Section 1. We, the people, establish the government, and the people are the sovereign, and the government is the servant. You look at Article 2, Section 1. Article 2, Section 2. The government was created to protect the rights of the people, not to deny them. You look at Article 2, Section 7, where it says the right to trial by jury shall remain inviolate. So all of these, the Arkansas Constitution has to be considered as a whole, Paul,
mm-hmm.
and that's what we're looking at in this tort reform fight, where they want to take away our rights and shove these caps down our throats, and they're not looking at the entire Constitution. I mean, they don't even consider Article 2, Section 13, nor did this court, when it says that we should obtain justice freely, without purchase, completely, and without denial. I mean,
yeah, promptly, without delay. Well, I mean, and the recent one of the big reasons I don't support what we're going to be voting on this November on the tort reform is because, it's going to give the legislature the authority to set rules of evidence for the judicial branch. That seems like a violation of the separation of powers. Let me ask you this. We're talking with Fort Smith attorney Joey McCutcheon. You can feel free to go back to the tort reform thing, but you're so familiar with FOIA, Freedom of Information. How do we get the state? Obviously, it looks like we can still get the cities and local governments to comply with freedom of information. But if you can't sue the state of Arkansas, how do we get the state of Arkansas to comply with freedom of information?
Well, here's what my suggestion will be, and I suspect that after the next election, I suspect that and really feel that I'm going to be asking for a constitutional amendment, or I'm going to ask the legislature to change the law in 2019. And I think that FOIA should apply not only to local folks, but it should also apply to state representatives and state senators.
I agree.
They're doing a ton of business. And that, while we have the strongest FOIA law, that Republicans, unfortunately, down at Little Rock last session, they tried to gut FOIA, completely gut it. It could have gone from the strongest. Our sunshine laws would have gone to the strongest to the weakest overnight. FOIA is the only way we hold government accountable. And I think there needs to be either legislators. I doubt they'll vote to where they have to do their business in public, but so we may have to go to the people and ask the people to pass a constitutional amendment to make FOIA, our sunshine laws, apply to state representatives where they can't go into back rooms and cut deals, which obviously they're doing. They can do that legally now, but it's not right. Back to tort reform, Paul, I agree with you. What they're trying to, what's happening down at Little Rock, they're trying to rig the system. And they're doing that with giving rule-making authority to legislators. Now, we know that it's not being given to the teachers and the farmers and the business folks down at Little Rock who are legislators because it's such a political environment. The rigged system will give all the power to lobbyists, and there will be no rights to the people. The right to trial by jury, you will never have access to the courtroom again. Not only do they want to rig that system in terms of, as you've said, the balance of powers, they want to rig the system. They want to say that if a person is a quadriplegic, if your wife's a quadriplegic or wrongfully killed out on the highways, they want to say that her life is worth $500,000. I mean, or the quadriplegia for the rest of a person's life is worth $500,000 without letting local people called citizen jurors make that call. That's immoral, and as we both know, Paul, it's unconstitutional. In 1874, the same Constitution that we're talking about on this sovereign immunity issue, our founding fathers put a provision that said the legislature cannot cap damages. And the reason they did that is because the railroad, today it's nursing homes, but the railroads of the day were teaming up with legislators and taking away the rights of the people. Our founding fathers had enough foresight to include that in our Constitution. And they, again, just like they want to take away FOIA overnight, they want to take away the right to trial by jury and the right to life. By placing a price tag on the value of human life. This price tag amendment is wrong, Paul. It's just a price tag amendment.
I tell you, I really appreciate your comparison to, the railroad companies to now nursing homes. I think that, I want to explore that some more. I want to get into the history of that because I think we can really learn, behind the motivations and maybe start drawing specific lines of comparison of what they were doing versus, we saw here in the last couple of years, you have a judge that says, hey, I accepted a bribe of $10,000 to lower a judgment against a nursing home owner. And so, we see where the special interests are, and it looks like it doesn't lie with. It looks like this amendment, this tort reform amendment, was written specifically for the nursing home industry.
Well, it was the nursing homes have pushed tort reform. They've pushed a price tag on the value of human life session after session. In 2013, in 2015, when they couldn't do it there, then they refer this thing out to the people. Did you see this weekend? And have you been reading in the newspapers this scabies scandal, where nursing home owners have instructed their workers not to report this scabies outbreak in this nursing home? Martha Deaver, who is a nursing home advocate, said she ties this to this issue one, whether you know how dangerous it is when because there's no accountability. Again, just like with FOIA, this tort reform is all about accountability. There's no accountability because regulators will not hold nursing homes, big business, accountable. This is just government overreach at its finest, Paul. It's issue one, this tort reform that they're asking us to vote on. I mean, it's big government in Little Rock making decisions that local folks should be making called jurors. And until there's a system in place to replace the finest system this world has ever known called a jury trial, then we better be careful because the world is going to become a much, much more dangerous place. Conduct rewarded is conduct repeated. And if a nursing home can kill grandmom and there's no accountability, then it's going to happen again. If Ford and Firestone can produce defective vehicles and maim and kill and make people quadriplegics and there's no accountability, it's going to happen to our families also, Paul. It's disturbing that it's conservative Republicans who are pushing this. But this is a nonpartisan issue, Paul, as we both know. There's people on both sides who understand this is about freedom. This is about what our founding fathers put in the Declaration of Independence, the right to trial by jury. And we know how important that is. If we don't have the Seventh Amendment, the right to trial by jury, we will have no other. We won't have the First Amendment. We won't have the right to free speech. We won't have the right to our weapons without the right to trial by jury. Now, I know some of my Second Amendment friends will say that the Second Amendment's what protects all the rest. Well, that's true if we're in a state of anarchy. But before that, the right to trial by jury is what holds government accountable.
We appreciate it. Joey McCutcheon, Fort Smith attorney. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Keep holding those governments accountable, those local governments and all governments. I appreciate what you do with the Freedom of Information Act and all that you're exposing. So, and I think you're on the right track. I think we do need to get an amendment to the people to say, hey, we also want this email, transparency to have to apply to those down at the Marble Palace. Joey McCutcheon, I appreciate it, sir.
Appreciate you. Thanks for having me on, Paul.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate all of you out there listening. Good morning to you. It's Conduit News Radio. We'll be back in just a moment.
Good morning. Good morning. Congratulations, you have made it to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, where we strive to offer politicians the very best in ambiguously specific language, the purpose of which is to allow our politician bosses to grow government and keep their constituents in the dark. This yields two beneficial outcomes. First, the government-growing politicians stay in office, and second, we at the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language get to remain in the shadows and get to keep our jobs. Now, it's time for technocrat training drills. Johnny?
Yes?
A politician wants to use the healthcare system to punish those who have and redistribute their wealth. What is the appropriate language to use in a situation to make an unpopular idea acceptable to the public?
I would emphasize that these ideas would make their healthcare more affordable and make sure the public understands if they already have adequate healthcare, nothing will change for them.
Very good, Johnny. Much progress since last time. Next up, let's have Susie. Susie, your politician has been caught in, dare I say it, a lie.
What kind of a lie?
It doesn't really matter, but in the spirit of the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, I will give you a good hypothetical scenario. Dozens of politicians have been thrown out of office for supporting a socialist healthcare program. So the remaining politicians get together and they pass a bill to, quote, end the program, end quote. But they really want to keep it. What should they do, Susie?
May I ask a question for more information?
Certainly.
Has the word lie been used by the political opposition?
Yes.
I know. They should change the name of the program. Maybe use the word works to make the sheeple think it's for working folk. Then they should go on the attack and get the public distracted. I would advise the politician to publicly question why our political dialogue has become so uncivilized and tell them to claim using the word lie, no matter how accurate, is a personal attack on his or her character. And if they admit to any wrongdoing at all, they must replace the word lie with words like misspoke, misstatement, misrepresent, or mislead.
Amazing! Excellent work, Susie. I feel like the student has really become the teacher. You will make a terrific addition to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language.
All hands on deck. This is a Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language emergency. Several politicians are scrambling after being exposed by some talk radio host. Let's move it, people. They need our help.
The Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language. You vote 'em in, and we keep 'em in. PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right. We'll probably talk more about this later in the week, but lo and behold, so we've interviewed Mr. Bob Bailey, who's running for Senate in the vacant Senate District 16 race special election. And on Friday, we interviewed Mr. Luke Heffley, who's one of the opponents. Of course, we still haven't talked to Breanne Davis. I don't think she wants to come on. That's just my opinion after she was scheduled and canceled and never got back in touch with us, as she said she would get back in touch with us. Of course, we know their positions, according to Talk Business and Politics, at least. And we have the interview now with Luke Heffley confirming the Talk Business and Politics piece. You know, that he's for trusting in ASA and that the work requirements, if you can call them that, will actually work. Breanne Davis is for Arkansas Works Obamacare. Bob Bailey is against. So it's no surprise that the ASA PAC, ASA's Political Action Committee, has contributed $2,700 to Breanne Davis of Russellville and $1,000 to Luke Heffley of Russellville, and has contributed no money to Bob Bailey of Russellville, because he knows that, listen, quote, the governor is focused on his race and has generally stated that he's remaining neutral in primaries this cycle, John Gilmore said in a written statement, according to Michael Wickline. However, if a candidate is going to openly support one of his opponents, the governor may engage, as he has done now, with contributions from his PAC to Breanne and Luke. So because Bob Bailey has supported Jan Morgan, that's what it is. It's because he supported Jan Morgan. It has nothing to do with the fact that if Bob wins, he's against ACE's agenda. Boy, what a tangled web we weave. What a tangled Doyle web we weave. Check out that first hour, folks. Go to conduitnews.com and click on Conduit News Radio and get the podcasts. Get the video archives. Go to facebook.com/Conduit News. You're going to want to listen to the first hour of the program if you really want to grasp what happened this weekend with Doyle Webb, and who is the chair of the Republican Party of Arkansas. Be safe, Arkansas.